All right. Oh, shit. I don't have anything to drink. Should be good here. Let's double check that we're live. Beautiful. I see Banner and Backbone. I see the Firebrand report. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's good to see everyone. We got another report for you. We're right on time. We're working on moving things around. We're working on making the newsletter shorter, working on making this content more available to everybody and more absorbable. So, yesterday I shortened the newsletter quite a bit. I hope that was helpful for you guys. And today I made it even easier. The whole thing is bulleted. All right. So it's all bullet points. You should be able to cruise through today's newsletter with no problems at all. Of course, the newsletter no longer contains my analysis. That's why you guys come here for my thoughts and that extra bit of analysis. So I'm happy to provide that for you guys today. Today we're going to tell by the title that it's we're going to be talking about North America. We're going to be talking about the EU. This is a geopolitics show. Okay, we do a lot of things. And I actually had a very interesting discussion this morning with Zev Shalev and Nick Pero about the Epstein files. So I chose to omit that from our coverage in the United States today. I'll give you guys some comments. I'll give you guys kind of my thoughts on everything. But I really more so wanted to focus on kind of a couple other things I noticed in the US. I'm trying to view this for you guys because this is a international show. We have an international audience. There's lots of people watching from different countries, and I want to give you guys a objective perspective of the United States. Of course, I'm not perfect. I am biased, but I want to try and view this objectively as I can to really give you guys an idea. So obviously the Epstein files are very important. Obviously they are going to have a major impact in the United States, but they're not something I'm going to really cover in depth at all in today's newsletter for North America, just to get that out of the way off the bat. So no, I'm not ignoring it. No, I do care. I think all things are important. I think it's all important. I think it's in context. It's even more important, especially following my discussion with Zev Shalev. And all the pieces that we can put together using geopolitics to better understand the Epstein files and their larger motivation. So much to go over there. And that's not necessarily the lane that I specialize, that I'm in at the moment, but full transparency, I think tomorrow, maybe the day after, I'm going to take a little break from doing this so I can dive in the Epstein files and I can find some answers using my knowledge, using what I know to kind of curate an investigation into things that I think are really important. It's about time that I contribute my analysis, my understanding, my ideas, my general worldview to this investigation. And I'm going to take a couple days to do that. So what we'll probably end up doing is I'll do a little bit of a dive, and then after maybe 1 or 2 days, you'll get me. I'll go ahead and publish my findings. Just so I can kind of contribute there. So that'll be interesting. I haven't had a lot of chances to do my investigative work. I am pretty darn good at it. But I chose to fill this niche, and I like this niche, but there's a time and a place for everyone to take a moment to contribute to something like this. And I will be doing that. So tomorrow, at least, I'm going to take a pause from the report, and I will be looking into the Epstein files tomorrow. So I'll let you guys know what I find. It should be interesting, but especially following the discussion I had with Nick Pero and Zev Shalev today. If you haven't seen that Palin Talk special episode, go watch it. It's here on Banner and Backbone Media, where we're streaming, as well as you can go find it there. I'll put a link to it in this show note as well. So with all that said, my friends, let's go ahead. We got a lot of geopolitics to talk about today. We're going to look at the Ukraine-Russia war. We're going to look at the effects it's having on Europe, as well as what's going on in Ukraine, and kind of give you guys the kind of idea of where the momentum is, what's going on, and the big takeaways, right? We're going to talk about North America, of course. We're going to talk about some interesting things that aren't maybe getting all the headlines that you would normally see, some things that stuck out to me. And then the primary focus of this report is going to be really on the EU because there's a lot of really interesting things happening there. And it's a pretty significant change. And I want to make sure we cover all of the important news that's coming out of this following the Munich Security Conference, which really was what appears to be a very big shift away from the status quo, which is very necessary in terms of geopolitical stability overall. So very interesting show for you guys. And make sure you go ahead. If you're here already, hit the heart button, hit it now. I want to see you hit it. I want to see the heart start to scroll. If you're here and you're not already subscribed, subscribe, hit the little name thing in the top left-hand corner and go ahead and subscribe so you get notified of the newsletter as well as when this recording comes out if you ever miss a show, because you're going to get a dance of all. You're going to get to see the whole world every week if you subscribe here. And that's really something unique that a lot of folks really just don't offer here on Substack that I'm proud to offer to you guys on Banner and Backbone and at the Firebrand Project. So get yourself in there and get yourself on the list. So with all that said, my friends, we got to hop into the report. We got news to talk about. We got a world on fire. So let's do it. My friends, it is February 17th, 2026. I am reporting you from the fascist states of America. The world is on fire. So let's talk about it. Welcome to the Firebrand Report, EU and American Spotlight. So let's first, we're going to talk about Russia and Ukraine first. I think it's important, and I think understanding the momentum in Ukraine is really important in understanding kind of the United States posture, the posture of Russia, Ukraine, and just the whole dynamic is really important. So our latest update here from Critical Threats and the Institute for the Study of War has been pretty interesting. And the first thing I'd like to note here is that Russia and Ukraine are going to be meeting for more peace talks here in Geneva for a trilateral peace talk on the 17th, starting today, and the 18th. They're meeting in Geneva. These meetings are going to take place between Ukrainian, Russian, and U.S. officials. However, there will be parallel meetings in Geneva between U.S. and Russian officials exclusively. These officials from Russia are going to be representing the Russian Direct Investment Fund, and this is probably pertaining to the Russian Bilateral Economic Group, this group that they are trying to build for joint investment between the United States and Russia. So, Russian officials ahead of time are said to be citing the agreement that supposedly Trump and Putin made at the Alaska summit in 2025, where the guide to Russian demands, in essence, is total capitulation and the ceding of the Donbass to Russia, which we've already established is entirely unacceptable to Ukraine. So we're really seeing that, again, they've declared that this is a nothing burger, right? They're already ahead of the game. Before we've even started, there's a nothing burger, because Zelensky himself has stated that it's just over 90% of Ukrainians do not agree with the secession of territory. Okay. And this is with Ukrainian civilian casualties up 26% in 2025. Okay. So they're killing more Ukrainians civilians than they have before, and the people of Ukraine do not believe in secession. Zelensky, I'm going to paraphrase him here, but he said something along the lines of, if we give up the Donbass, like, why would we do that? It's going to cost them 800,000 lives and 2 years to take the Donbass. And I don't think they're going to make it that long. And I have to agree with him. So, this peace deal, to me, in my honest take here is, I think these agreements and these talks have been really an excuse for the United States and Russia to hold consistent meetings on how to collaborate and undermine the European order, the global world order, and how to further the goals of Russia, and in tandem, whether that's the United States acting on behalf of Russia, where with the Epstein files coming out, it really does appear that way, that at least Russia and Israel are exerting significant control of the United States, and at the moment, 100% control over the United States. So, in that regard, this is what it seems like to me as a observer who has seen this happen again and again. This is an example. This is an excuse for Steve Witkoff to go and meet with Putin and his people to figure out how they can support Russia um, financially in their war in Ukraine, and to rescue the Russian economy and Putin from imminent collapse that's been brought on by his decision to invade Ukraine. So, Peskov, who was the spokesperson, of course, he stated that the talks would discuss a broader range of issues than the previous talks in Abu Dhabi and would focus on territorial issues. So, yeah, they want to talk about, giving up the Donbass. And we've already discussed that that's not going to happen. So, this is really, not going to yield anything. If it yields anything, it will be the development between whatever the next stage in the plan between Russia and the United States is. Um, an interesting bit of news, not bad, not good, right? Russia has successfully occupied Pokrovsk. We've been talking about Pokrovsk, if you've been with me for a while, for quite some time. Uh, this has taken 2 years, 2 years of fighting, hunt probably over 10, tens of thousands of lives, absolutely, to take this city. And the westernmost parts of Pokrovsk, just a few square miles, had been held by Ukrainian forces since October of 2025, when observers like myself were actually thinking that the time had come, that Pokrovsk was going to fall, and yet they really were able to hold on to Pokrovsk for another 5 months. Um, while this may seem like a bad thing, that they lost the city, the important thing to understand in context here is that Pokrovsk itself was, always going to fall. It was always going to go. It was merely a matter of time. There were some poor decisions made in terms of the defense of Pokrovsk, especially in the more southeastern parts of the city where you had some poorly equipped troops. But in general, this is a slow creep, and the Russians were almost inevitably going to take the city. Again, though, it's not a matter of will they take the city eventually. It's the cost they pay, and the cost that Ukraine sold Pokrovsk for was spectacular. They made Putin pay big time for this city. And the thing we really have to understand here too is that, and I've got a nice little map here, so I'll show you guys the map while I kind of talk about this as well, because I always think it's important to give you guys kind of a better idea of exactly what we're seeing in Pokrovsk. So I'll go ahead and I'll share this here with you. We'll take a look at this together, and we'll kind of look at this together here. So go ahead and share this map with you, and we'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing here and what that means. So, of course, so what we're going to look at here is going to be the wider Ukraine direction here in Pokrovsk. So you've got Rodensk and, of course, Pokrovsk here. So this city, of course, is basically, we've seen them now in this area, Herishny, where they've started to kind of creep out. They're still really struggling to kind of go along this rail line. But what's really, I think, most important is that the time that Ukraine had to fortify all of this territory behind us, right? Because where you have Herishny and these other places as well, this is where they're going to start reinforcing. And it's worth noting here too that at the same time, Ukraine is counterattacking here, right, to the northeast. They are counterattacking up in this other area near Shekova, where the Russians have been trying to push out here and get into encircle Dobropilia. and move farther in towards the fortress belt around Ukraine, particularly that fortress belt where you have these cities that are the next step for Russia if they are going to actually pull off the taking of eastern Ukraine. And that's just really not something that we can see with any certainty coming up right now. And we can really talk about this too with a better picture here where I can zoom in here and really show you guys what this fortress belt looks like. So even though, right, you have Pokrovsk, which has fallen. This is our Pokrovsk region in here. You do have these counterattacks around this area, and these blue spots, these are counterattacks, right? These are Ukraine is it's actively taking back territory. But what you have here is Kramatorsk, Druskivka, and this area with Konstantinivka as well, one of those heavily fortified cities. But this is one of the front lines where you're actually seeing Ukrainian kind of counterattacks. Russia is trying to do what it does frequently, where it'll just kind of push out on both of these flanks and it'll try and encircle. This is what they did in Pokrovsk. It's why Pokrovsk fell when it did, because the Russians were able to break through. But regardless, this is really um, it's a development, but it's not the end of the world. It's not going to, even if Russia hails it as some big victory, the fact they held it as long as they did, that was a victory because they've been able to reinforce all of this land behind. They've been able to reorganize troops, and that's going to help protect the flank here on Konstantinivka, which is really important because they do not want the Russians to get this flank here. If they build a pocket around Konstantinivka, you could see actually this whole area go as well, right? This is why they're doing these kind of things. It's kind of a little pincer. They'll do a pincer and then try and trap and flood them out, right? And with drones, this is significant because, of course, when you see these drones, they can, go behind enemy lines. So if you create a pocket where you can launch drones from both sides, effectively everywhere in that pocket is open to effectively drone bombardment. So it's rather significant when we're talking about that to understand that their methodology, it's pretty simple, right? It's brutal, it's a meat grinder, and it's slow. And it really is not working all that well. Additionally, we're seeing Russia announce that it's expanding its drone operations. So it's expanding its investments into drone technology, including support and air defense roles. Roscosmos, the head of that agency, which was formerly the Russian space agency, has moved on to war and killing people, very Putin-esque. They said that they are working on special updating they're saying that the BARS, Sarmat Unmanned Systems Special Purpose Center, is increasing recruitment, developing more specialized roles and combat units as well. They're making 2 new detachments for deep strikes. These are 30 to 35-kilometer drone units to be part of this program. So, they're also announcing a new military specialist role called the soldier technologist. This is designed to facilitate the development and integration of drone capabilities across Russian forces at large. So they're really trying to integrate drone warfare into their ground forces on a larger scale, not necessarily just specified drone units. So we know Russia's commitment to drones is premier among the world. I mean, they really have committed to building these drones. They're using drones. It's Russia and Ukraine that are at the forefront of the drone war. And it's my opinion, and I think it's pretty substantiated that Ukraine does have the edge in terms of training, in terms of implementation, and we really do see that. On the battlefield for sure. The Russians are not distributing drones as effectively or as widely as Ukraine. Additionally, Ukraine is leading the way with ground drones. They're using drones on the ground, and they've been doing it for a couple months now. They've got drones that are equipped with weapons. They've actually been holding certain areas with drones. They're able to evacuate wounded troops with these ground drones. So as the drone situation evolves across Ukraine, it's constantly who is doing the next thing. And Ukraine has a higher emphasis on protecting the the human life, and that really shows in its commitment to building more effective drone systems. Um, on the 15th, Western intelligence officials did confirm to the Financial Times that former Wagner Group recruiters are organizing sabotage operations across Europe. We've seen a bunch of these. There was the one in Poland. There was um, there's been a bunch of them. Yeah, it's escaping me, but this is not the first. This is not a surprise to me. But Russia is supposedly leveraging these relationships with Wagner recruiters to maintain several degrees of separation so they can keep deniability. They're targeting Europeans for recruitment that are economically vulnerable to carry out these attacks. Okay. So, the actual quote here from my source, the Wagner Group the Wagner Group recruiters are reportedly trying to attract Europeans, particularly those who are economically vulnerable or lack purpose or direction in their lives, to conduct arson attacks or pose as putative Nazi propagandists in Europe. Right. So Nazi propaganda is a big part of any kind of justification for Russian invasion. It's all about denazification. That was the whole justification for Ukraine. Um, was one that it was part of Russia, but the other is that the Nazis. It's always Nazis for them. The irony, of course, is that they're pretty much Nazis as well. Um, so important, and this is really one of those things where I talk about momentum a lot. The momentum at this moment in time lies with Ukraine. So the Institute for the Study of War, as well as I have reporting here that was from The Guardian, but they were citing the Institute for the Study of War. The Ukraine has made a series of successful counterattacks between Sunday and Wednesday of last week that total 201 square kilometers of territory that was liberated from Russian occupation. This is exactly on the heels of the Starlink shutdown, and they're definitely using this momentum to really hit these Russian forces back, where they were able to push these guys out. These are the most significant gains they have made since the 2023 offensive. Um, you know, this is a pretty big deal, particularly where this is happening is important because it's the region of southern Zaporizhia, where there was actually in the Zaporizhia region where Russia was actually making some pretty solid gains. So these counterattacks are really important because they need to stop that momentum, and they need to stop Russia from reaching, Zaporizhia as well as Dnipro and the Dnipro River, and it's a really big where they're pushing from around Crimea and that southeastern Ukraine. They've been really creeping up there, so these counterattacks are really important, and it's really significant here. So I think that that's a really good determinant of how the situation in Ukraine is going. Ukraine loses ground, but the fact of the matter is that Ukraine is retaking ground, which effectively means the rate at which Russia is advancing, they're pretty much net zero. Uh, that's just reality. They're not they're not taking ground fast enough. Uh, and where they do attack, if they overextended, like this could be a major setback. I don't think these Starlink that they'll find a way around the Starlink ban. The tightening relationship between the United States and Russia is becoming more and more evident here. And so I think they'll find a way around it. But this is good. This is good for Ukraine. And whilst, they may say, oh, Pokrovsk has fallen. They decided when they were going to leave Pokrovsk at this point. They pulled out the troops from the nearby city of Mirorod in December. And so this is a positive thing. And I am going to kind of just say this, now as we wrap, I think that Ukraine is winning. I do. I think that Russia is losing. I do. And I think that Europe is effectively supporting Ukraine, and it's a problem for Putin. They cannot break Ukraine. It can't be done, not with what they currently have. And they're not in the business of getting anything else more rapidly anytime sooner. Does that mean Russia is a lame duck? Hell no. Does that mean Russia could effectively invade an entirely different front like the Baltics? Absolutely. Because we have to remember that the Ukrainian defense forces are probably the most premier military in Europe. They might be some of the best military in the world. And in terms of drone warfare, they are the best. They make the notion that they are not. Ukraine needs to be part of Europe because they know how to fight a modern war. The United States does not know how to fight a modern war. The UK, France, no one has fought a modern war other than Ukraine and Russia. The United States has picked Russia. Europe's going to pick Ukraine. And every decision that's been made here and is pretty much along those lines, is very much drawing that line. So the Russian effort in Ukraine, the Ukrainian military is premier among the world. The Russian military is has a turnover rate unlike anything else. If they were running a business, they'd have no employees. I believe in some fronts, I saw the number that it was 27-1 in certain fronts across Ukraine in terms of Russian to Ukrainian losses. It's absurd. It's not sustainable. And, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And this is the definition of idiocy, right? Of stupidity. It's doing the same insanity, right? Sorry. It's doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result. That is Putin's chronic weakness. And it's just not going to, it's why they're going to fail. Of course they've committed. Of course they've committed very heavily. They really sent in everything and they were going to go for it. And it doesn't look that like it's really going to continue that way. So in terms of Ukraine and Europe, I think that a lot of the things we're going to see around Europe, a lot of the escalations and the aggression, particularly between the United States, this idea of economic cooperation, the meeting that I'm going to talk about later of Marco Rubio to visit Orban in Hungary. This is positive for me. This is positive for me because I do see a balance of power. I do see a shift in momentum. And, I think the importance of the United States involvement in Ukraine is pretty much negligible at this point. The United States is not helping in Ukraine. The United States is using Russian peace talks as a means to treat with Russia and to collude with Russia. And Ukraine is doing the right thing by basically playing party, saying, oh, we're being amicable. Oh, we're helping. And it just makes everyone else, it makes Russia look like the aggressor. It makes the United States look silly. And that's exactly what they need to be doing. Momentum is firmly seated within in Ukraine. In terms of the war, losing territory doesn't necessarily mean losing the war, because if Russia collapses, Ukraine gets all that back. So we're going to pivot really quick. We're going to talk about the United States, but that's what I have for you in Ukraine. That's kind of my thoughts and my analysis on that as well. And we'll kind of go into talk a little bit about what the United States is going on in North America, and then we'll go ahead and we'll talk and we'll round this all out with the EU. So pretty big situation for the United States coming up here in Texas. The early voting for the Senate race in Texas is coming up on March 3rd. Jasmine Crockett, firecracker, love her, and James Talrico are going to be running off in the primary for the Democratic nomination to the Senate race in Texas. This has been actually rather uncomfortable for the Republican incumbents here, as popularity with Latino voters carried Trump and Republicans in 2024. They have now put those voters in concentration camps. So I don't think they will be getting as much support from the Latino population in Texas. further concern is driving them as well. Their anxiety here, because a state Senate seat in Texas was recently clinched by a Democrat in a district that was carried by Trump by 17 points. So you're seeing, districts that went big for Trump. These are gerrymandered districts, right? Texas is gerrymandered to hell. So if they're losing in these districts that are already gerrymandered, there is definitely reason for concern for them here. The popularity of this presidency has never been lower. They keep hitting new lows. It's record after record, whether it's the government shutdown, whether it's the number of pedophiles in office, whether it's the number of times the president is mentioned in the Epstein files. They're doing it. It's very unpopular. The people running against these Republicans are split between a guy named Ken Paxton, who was impeached from his from the Texas House for bribery and corruption, and the incumbent John Cornyn. Cornyn is backed by the traditional wealthy Republican donors, and Paxton is backed by Turning Point USA, the former group that was led by Charlie Kirk, now headed by Erica Kirk, who is pretty loathsome. She's pretty awful too. So despite Crockett entering the race late, she appears to be approaching the final stretch with momentum. University of Houston, they had a survey saying that they found her leading Talrico 47 to 39%. And the poll showed both candidates broadly popular with all voters. So both are, both are well positioned. If you want my 2 cents, vote for Jasmine Crockett if you're in Texas. Nothing wrong with James Talrico. Have him run for Congress, but not the Senate. If you're trying to fight fascism, you want to elevate minority women. Why? Because they have absolutely zero motivation to bow to fascists. They are fighting for themselves. They are fighting for everyone, and they are the group that's being targeted. So they're going to fight like hell. Vote for women. Men are not a safe bet. They're not going to lose their rights. So, in that sense, that's my 2 cents on that. But I think Jasmine Crockett, she's fantastic. No AIPAC money from her. 10 out of 10. We love Jasmine Crockett. She's been one of the most outspoken people in the United States Congress. And I do think that provided elections are not tampered with, I think she comes out on top there. But there's a lot of questions in the United States in terms of our election integrity. So, James Talrico, good guy. I really love. He's a religious guy. He comes from a very Christian background, but he's not your typical, Epstein files, Gaza Humanitarian Foundation or your big mega church Christian donor. No, he's very aligned with the teachings of Jesus and the good things that come out of having a faith and a religion. So, I do like James Talrico as well, and I hope that he finds a place in the Congress. An interesting comment here, Kirk is going to marry JD. Yes, she has set her sights on JD Vance. The question is, how does JD get rid of his wife and kids, right? That's the question, and we don't know. So, trust Jesus, not the church, right? That's James Talrico's kind of line, and I think that line rocks. So trust Jesus, not the church. Works for me. As a Californian, I wanted to bring all of this to your attention, particularly because of where I'm located and everything. I tend to reach more Californians. They're the largest state of viewership that I have, but some pretty concerning information coming out of California. Google and Meta have ramped up their involvement in California elections. You've seen Palantir's co-founders donate money. You've seen crypto investors come in. California has struggled absolutely to curb its tech influence under Governor Newsom, who supports billionaires and techno fascism. Uh, he has enabled these companies to basically do whatever they want. He's also vetoed any restrictive legislation passed by California against billionaires and big tech. Donations are being spread out, though, across um, local and state officials. We're talking about potentially down to school boards and city councils. Okay, so if you're in California, be scrutinizing everything about your officials. The introduction of a 5% billionaire tax really caused a big scramble among the billionaires. Peter Thiel and a lot of these other billionaires made a big stink that they were going to leave California and take all their money. We don't care. They really aren't going to, it's not going to matter to us. And it costs them more money to do. If they want to move, then move. I don't want you here, Peter. San Francisco doesn't want you here. He can get the hell out. So unfortunately, though, this is all very going to be very muddy. So Meta has launched 2 PACs recently, 2 last fall. Crypto industry is launching crypto aligned PACs as well. Google is launching aligned PACs. The billionaires appear to have picked their chosen governor for California, Matt Mahan. He identifies as a moderate Democrat. Okay, so I want to point out here the importance of not just voting blue in California. This is me speaking to Americans here, not in geopolitics, but as an American speaking to my fellow Californians. You know, this is something that that's very insidious. It's very evident that they've switched tactics here. So this is just a quick quote from the article that was my source here in The Guardian. I thought it's valuable information here. So Meta launched 2 new super PACs last fall, which are focused on dialing back AI regulation and supporting AI friendly candidates. The company contributed $45 million to one, the American Technology Excellence Project, which will operate in several states, but has not yet been established in California. That said, the mobilizing economic transformation across Meta, California, is state specified and has gotten $20 million as well. They are donating to groups campaigning for relaxed taxation and minimal regulation around AI. So the objective here with this is twofold. To capture the governorship of California, which is the home of big tech, Silicon Valley, right? It means a lot to them, as well as to capture basically state and local officials to basically paralyze California. California is exceptionally powerful. California has the most seats of any states in the Congress. California is important. So I for myself as a Californian and anyone who's in America, do your homework. Do not vote for someone just because they're a Democrat. And if they've taken $1, ditch them, because this could be a very damaging situation. It could be very, very bad situation for the overall democratic, struggle against techno-fascism in the United States if California were to be captured by this level of political manipulation by big tech. We're talking about tens of millions of dollars here. So Mahan, he's a puppet. He is working for the billionaires. So don't vote for that guy. But, this is very kind of espionage-esque, right? You don't know who you're voting for if they're the right guy. So this is really important in California. I wanted to cover this today because it's going to have big implications for the United States, right? We're talking about these elections as they come and go. And there is a lot of tension in America regarding the midterms, whether or not they will even occur. And if they do, will they be free and fair? And that really is the question. So Gavin Newsom, he enabled a lot of this, and with him leaving, not being able to be reelected, they're going to try and put someone else in there. What I can tell you is there's a couple women running for governor, so don't vote for a man. Don't vote for a man. Um, you know, in terms of this question, what do I think about Maple MAGA trying to join the West Coast states? Uh, I think that if you're part of Canada, you stay part of Canada. You don't want anything to do with America. Trust me. And ultimately, what's going on in Canada with all of this kind of separatist movement, uh, I think this is largely driven by big tech. I think that it would make sense. They want to, but the Western states of the United States are going to be looking at a battle here um, in their elections, because the West Coast is really the heartland of big tech. Silicon Valley. Peter Thiel got his start in San Francisco, where he did the Founders Fund. California has always been friendly to tech. It's one of the reasons the economy here is so big. But they're not going to. It doesn't necessarily mean that um, the tech gets to run the government here. So the elections in California are going to be significant, and they are coming up here soon in November. The United States struck another 3 boats in the Pacific and the Caribbean. 11 people have been killed. At this point, there's been 42 strikes. 145 have been killed since September of 2025. As well as international watchdogs, lawyers, they all maintain these killings are extrajudicial and they constitute a violation of international law and human rights. The UN itself has called for the cessation of these strikes. The United States does not plan on listening. The announcement from Southcom was that 11 male narco-terrorists were killed during these actions, 4 on the first vessel in the Eastern Pacific, 4 on the second vessel in the Eastern Pacific, and 1 on a third vessel in the Caribbean, 3 on a third vessel in the Caribbean. So, it's I hate Pete Hegseth. He said, "Turns out President's Day under Trump is not a good day to run drugs." Man, go drink yourself to death in a corner. I ain't got no time. We ain't got no time for this guy. He's dumb as hell. So, the United States idiocracy is just ridiculous. Really quick question: do I know about TESCREAL? If you don't know about TESCREAL, I'm going to tell you what TESCREAL is in one sentence. TESCREAL is a religion that all of these billionaires subscribe to, that they are going to create a AI god that will deliver them from their physical bodies, upload their consciousness to some sort of grander scheme, and they will abandon mankind and become some greater race. Okay, they're actually that insane. So these are the guys that are trying to buy California's election. So that probably isn't in the best interest of the people of really the world if these guys create an AI god. They call it the singularity. Yes, TESCREAL is real. TESCREAL is a thing, and it's really sickening. So the last part of the show, we're really going to go and I want to talk about AI. If your guys are just now joining us, are going to talk about the EU. Sorry. If you're just now joining us, if you're getting here for this part of the show, make sure you hit the like button, hit the heart. Thank you for stopping in, and wherever you are, the newsletter and the recording is going to come out. So if you're only catching the back end, don't worry. I'll publish all of this with the newsletter. You can kind of skim through. It'll be all great. So thank you guys for joining me if you're just now getting in, and let's talk about the EU. So first thing we have here is Marco Rubio is visiting Hungary, and Belgian defense minister, as well as top European diplomats, in response to this, have shared their thoughts with an interview with PBS on the subject. So it really on the state of the transatlantic partnership. So Marco Rubio There's literally a picture of him shaking hands with Viktor Orban. You can see it in the newsletter. He visited Hungary. Rubio praised the relationship between Trump and Orban, stating, President Trump is deeply committed to your success because your success is our success. Yes, the Secretary of State is hyping up a wannabe dictator who is a puppet of the Kremlin. Hungary is holding its elections on April 12th, and Orban will be seeking a fifth term. He has been cracking down on media, press, uh, prosecuting political rivals. So the United States expressing support for Orban is them actively expressing support for a want-to-be dictator, a person who is stamping out civil rights, free press, all of those things. So that's them effectively supporting Hungary, as well as Hungary is one of the only states in the EU that is refused to stop purchasing Russian oil, or at the very least, dial back the amount of oil that it's purchasing, despite the EU putting out a mandate on Ukraine to support Ukraine by trying to reduce oil purchases from Russia. An interview with the Belgian Defense Minister, Theo Franken, Franken on PBS raised questions about the transatlantic relationship. Franken really highlighted that the importance of decoupling from the United States defense, from a defense perspective, as well as the fact that Greenland taught the EU a valuable lesson on pushing back against United States pressure. He noted that the Europeans felt the US was trying to appease Europe after its failed attempt to annex Greenland, which is a very interesting perspective. And when PBS spoke to Kaja Kallas, who is the Foreign Affairs High Representative for the European Commission, that is the highest European diplomat in the EU, they confirmed that Germany is in discussions with France to cooperate on a nuclear deterrent. Those are ongoing. And that French President Macron's comments at the Munich Security Conference about de-risking from the United States, I quote him here, "We will de-risk vis-a-vis all the big powers in order to be much more independent," and that statement is in line with European defense independence efforts. So, what's really significant here is we're hearing, what really appears to be the sentiment is that Europe is absolutely at this point, one, has scored a big win in Greenland, and that the idea is, whether the United States wants to say that or not, that the feeling in Europe is that the United States is appeasing them. A direct quote from Kaja here. I mean, we are strengthening our defense. We are really trying to get over our dependencies, because dependencies make us vulnerable and weak. We are diversifying our trade relationships. We are also diversifying our defense and security partnerships so that we are not putting all the eggs in the same basket. And of course, in terms of security, we have been dependent on the United States, and we are doing more to be more independent when it comes to security. So the reason that Orban is really being tolerated is there's not really a clean way to get them out, and there's still technically a democracy. So what might happen is, if things go very, very poorly in this election coming up in April, you could see some sanctions or some action in the EU. But as of right now, they haven't really been able to, it's still kind of iffy. But they've said a lot about, Orban and how he's handled things. There's been a lot of criticism of Hungary. It's really a plant in the EU to make things harder, and they know that. So, in terms of decoupling, they're going to move away from the United States financially. They really kind of clear about this as well. So it's going to be financial and defense decoupling. But, I want to as well, we're going to talk a little bit about a pretty significant change here as well in Europe. The EU is putting a lot of pressure on big tech. Europe is taking steps to curtail big tech across the continent, but progress has been slowed by fear of U.S. retaliation. France, Spain, Greece, Denmark, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic have echoed Australia's recent move to implement a social media ban to protect youth. And Germany and the UK are considering similar measures. Spain ordered prosecutors to investigate Meta, X, and TikTok for spreading AI-generated child sexual images. Ireland has opened a probe into Grok for the personalization, processing of personal data, and more sexualized content. Under the EU's Digital Services Act, these companies can face fines of up to 6% of their global annual turnover for failing to remove dangerous content. The United States under Trump has threatened tariffs and sanctions if the EU imposes taxes or enforces the DSA on US companies. So that really kind of has been a roadblock for them. They've been iffy. They don't want these sanctions. They've been trying to kind of get their ducks in a row. What this tells me is that Europe feels more confident, that they feel more ready, that they kind of feel like they can do it themselves. I mean, there probably was a lot of anxiety, like, can we back Ukraine effectively? But when the United States abandoned Europe, which they did almost immediately, they figured out that they could do it themselves. And when it came to Greenland, they stood together and the United States backed off. Europe is capable um, of being the dominant power in the world. They are super capable. They've got tons of military contractors. They got tons of scientists, very smart people, loads of money. So, if Europe can really get its stuff together, it can be a mitigating factor in the collapse of the world order, which is significant. And in terms of turnover, I believe that is generally that has something to do with their top line, but I'm not 100% sure. But whatever it is, it scares the shit out of these companies as well. For sure, they don't like that. Just some extra, context from other European officials. Spain's consumer rights minister, Pablo Bustandi, told Le Grand Continent newspaper on Tuesday that his country's crackdown aimed to break free from digital dependence on the United States, adding some platforms were being used to destabilize European democracies from within. French President Emmanuel Macron last year called U.S. resistance to European regulation a geopolitical battle. Trump's administration warned in December that Europe faced civilizational erasure and urged the U.S. to foster resistance to Europe's current trajectory. The Greek Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis, said, reading Jonathan Haidt's Anxious Generation, which argues that smartphones and social media are rewiring children's brains, was an eye-opening experience. He says, we are running the biggest unchecked experiment on our children's brains ever. He is correct. And for Macron, who has blamed social media for fueling violence among young people. The turning point was the fatal stabbing of a school aide by a 14-year-old in June. He said he would push for an EU-wide ban on adolescent use if necessary, acting unilaterally in France. So what we're seeing here is this actual push against tech. This is really big. This is significant because where they're going to come and limit tech, they're realizing that US tech is part of a Russian espionage destabilization campaign. At the very least, an American destabilization campaign. But this is significant for Europe to take these kind of steps because it means that they're willing to draw the ire of the United States, because they will throw some tariffs and whatever on them if they do it, or they won't. Because if Europe called the bluff on Greenland, maybe they'll call the bluff on them too. We don't necessarily know. What I do know is that the vibe of Europe has really changed, actually, following this Munich Security Conference over the last couple months. Europe is waking up. That's put extremely well. Europe is ready. Europe has taken their time, but the important leaders in Europe, they're ready to really push back, and they're seeing the level of destabilization. They're watching the U.S. try and cripple the UN, and now is the time for them to push back. So It's really reassuring, actually, from a geopolitical perspective, to see this kind of action. And this is not the only action I'm getting to report on today. So the Munich Security Conference was recently took place here, and French and German leaders came out there as well, that they have been discussing a nuclear deterrent for Europe. This was confirmed by Chancellor Merz. French President Emmanuel Macron is calling for a new security dynamic in Europe, focusing on independence from American defense. There are still concerns about J.D. Vance's hostile attitude towards Europe at last year's security conference. And these are driving efforts to decouple, despite reassurances from Marco Rubio at the conference this year. So Marco Rubio came and was very nice. He was very nice to Europe. He's so full of shit. But basically, they're sticking with what JD Vance said, which is, we want to destroy your democracies. And they're basically hedging their bet that if Marco Rubio goes, well, we're back to square one. European leaders are seeking to rapidly expand Europe's economic power, suggesting that countries in the bloc that are hesitant to move forward could be left behind, as a smaller group of EU members, numbering 9 states, will begin enhanced cooperation if all 27 members of the bloc are not in agreement by June. This was made by the EU President Ursula von der Leyen and French President Emmanuel Macron. So, really, again, action. We're moving with or without you. Additionally, Keir Starmer, during his speech, hinted that he is looking to deepen ties with the EU and on economic and defense cooperation outside of NATO. Okay, so, a quote from Macron here. The Europeans must start this work with their own thinking and their own interests. So my proposal today is to launch a series of consultations on this important issue, which we have started to flesh out with our British and German colleagues, but in the broader European consultation with all the colleagues here with lots of capacities, a lot of strategic thinking. A quote here as well. The first movers, and this is on the actions taken by the EU, which this meeting actually took place several days before the actual conference. So you had a meeting of these European countries as well prior to the Munich Security Conference. So they were already having a planning session, a pregame, if you will, before this. And so the leading 6 economies did take part in a talk last month hosted by Germany on a Europe of 2 speeds. The decision basically to break decision-making inertia and galvanize the economy. The other 5 countries were France, Italy, Spain, Poland, and the Netherlands. Okay, so you've got these countries talking about really just saying, if you're gonna stay behind, we're gonna leave you. And lastly, a quote here from Keir Starmer. The United Kingdom is ready. We seek the imperative. We see the imperative. We see the urgency. We want to work together to lead a generational shift in defense industrial cooperation. Now, this includes looking again at closer economic alignment. Deeper economic integration is in all of our interests, so we must look at where we could move closer to the single market in other sectors as well, where that would work for both sides. So basically, we're looking to reverse Brexit. Which was arguably one of the stupider things the UK has done, but they were going through their own thing, and I don't blame them for political instability, because the US, we have 0 room for criticism. So, the fact that they're walking that back, that they're looking to deepen ties, is all very, reminiscent of this vibe coming out of the Munich Security Conference, which is, we're done. We're done. And we don't need you. We don't need you. And, we're gonna prosecute your companies. We're gonna ban your social media platforms. We're gonna protect our children because you rape your children, and we're gonna protect our children, right? Like this, whether it was the Epstein files that really pushed all of this over the edge in terms of, just how badly mired down the United States is, whether it was the just brutality around Greenland, which I think is absolutely like just stupid, right? That they forced Europe to draw a line in the sand saying we'll literally shoot you. Like that relationship is dead, regardless of whether or not the diplomats are being diplomatic about things. Doesn't really change the fact that the United States crossed that bridge, and now you're seeing them meet with Hungary and Orban. That's direct alignment with Russia. Orban is Russia. So this pretty straightforward. I mean, the United States is moving closer with Russia. They're holding talks in Geneva where they want to talk about closer economic alignment. Europe has decided that Trump's with Putin, and he is. And so my take here, they really bided their time throughout 2025. They got their ducks in the row and they appeased him. And for a lot of people, myself included, it was really frustrating. You need to stand up to Trump. You need to stand up to Trump. You need to stand up to the billionaires and the fascists. Well, they couldn't do that right away. So, you know, in this case, I think that this is really a big deal in the global order. And you're going to see, some headbutting here. Now, the question is, does the United States bow down? I don't know. Is the United States really capable of going against a united Europe? Or maybe not even a united EU, right? If you pull the top 7 economies in the EU, a lot of these member states don't do much, right? That's the benefit of the EU is you get the collective, right? So if these European countries decide to go ahead, it's decisiveness. It's what's lacking in the United States to deal with our situation here. It's what is lacking in Africa as well. It's why they can't be stable. Why is China so successful? They're decisive. They do it. They get it done. They do what Xi Jinping says. Europe has struggled with stagnation for a very long time. And this will galvanize them to get it done. And they've used Ukraine has been a means for unity in Europe, a means for them to work together. And the U.S. abandonment, really, they're making more weapons than the United States right now. The United States is barely making any weapons at all. So, they're protecting their democracy by focusing on limiting these media companies, which are extensions of the United States techno-fascist government. You could call Facebook a psyop because it is. It was a psyop, right? So it's all a psyop. So knowing and using this to protect kids, I think Europe is really moving in the right direction. And I can say that, and I'm happy to say that, that Europe is moving in a direction that is to maintain the world order, to maintain their economy, and to ultimately protect democratic interests around the world. So that's the report. And it's not horrible, guys. It's really not. I would say this is some of the most reassuring news that I have seen in a while. Canada, it's an honorable mention. I was going to put it in here, but I ran out of time. Yes, Canada has moved to in-house domestic manufacturing for all of its weaponry. So, it's really the world is done. The world is done. And the only friend the United States really has is Russia, it seems. And they're not really even that friendly. They're just kind of using and abusing the U.S. But this is what it looks like when the world order is changing and Europe has decided that they're going to be a leader. And by working with Canada, it will be significant. The biggest challenge for Europe is going to be getting Palantir and all Peter Thiel associated companies out of their defense industry. The United States is a tyrant. The UN has condemned everything the United States has done over and over and over again. It's just not the same country it was 2 years ago. And so that's where the United States is sitting right now. And they're going to be a pariah here very, very soon. Once everyone is ready I wouldn't even be surprised if you see sanctions. Everyone's just putting their ducks in a row, and the world is getting ready for a dramatic shift away from the United States. The people in the United States, the money here, it's gotten toxic and it's dangerous to the world order, and they see it. It's reassuring for me because I love democracy. I loved my American democracy, which is no more at the moment. And I love democracy around the world. I believe people should be able to determine who they want to lead them. They should be able to elect people who will care for them, and they deserve basic fundamental human rights. And under autocracy, those are not provided to people. Democracy is the best means we have to provide basic human rights to all people, regardless of their skin color, of their gender, of how they identify, their sex, where they come from, if they are disabled, if they are neurodivergent. It doesn't matter. That's what democracy is for. And we'll keep talking about it. So, guys, thank you so much. If you haven't hit the like button yet, if you have not hit the like button yet, hit the like button. If you have not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. And the most important thing I can ask you guys to do always is take what we talked about today, take this newsletter, share it with somebody else when it gets posted, take what we talked about today and go and talk about these things, right? That's what being a firebrand is. It's about broaching uncomfortable conversations, about bringing geopolitical dialogue and big picture thinking into your day-to-day life. And I'm very grateful that I'm given the opportunity by you guys every day to do that. So please help continue supporting my work. Become a paid subscriber for $6 a month if you can, and become a free subscriber if you can't. Like, comment, restack, share this, and I will see you guys soon. Tomorrow I won't be here. Tomorrow I'm going to dive deep into the Epstein files. So I've got work to do, and I'll let you guys know what I find. But until Thursday, take care, everybody, and remember, burn bright, resist, and I will talk to you all later.